Now, where were we? Oh yeah, rampaging through the palace of one Seki Shimizu to get our lost teammates back. Make sure the music isn't too loud. Off we go. The final stretch of their progress was unimpeded. Whatever force had compelled the palace to reconfigure itself around them had either surrendered or been exhausted. Those dingy walls huddled within the shadows of their ruination. They didn't rush. Futaba kept a close eye on her scans, cautious of any last-ditch attempts by the labyrinth to separate them from the mysterious persona signal, which itself had almost dwindled to nothing. "I'm getting Crow and Joker where it used to be, though," she told them. "So, good news?" "So long as they're alright," said Makoto. "And so long as they ain't trying to kill each other again," Ryuji added under his breath. Futaba didn't appear concerned. Every time Crow tried to square off against Joker, he got dunked on. So at worst, he'll just be a little sulky. Sans reference, Futaba's played Undertale before. "Here, Noir." "Right away!" Haru casually firebombed another wall into oblivion. Joker could also still be confined, the same as Shimizu's other captives. But we can cross that bridge when we come to it. "That bridge is coming up," said Morgana, scenting the air. "We're right on top of them. Queen, will you do the honors?" Makoto clenched her fist. "Knock, knock." "Fist of Justice!" The last wall burst apart in a cloud of splinters. Makoto stepped over the debris, her expression resolute, and then stopped. The others started to a halt behind her. Akira and Akechi were sprawled out in the middle of the room, both of them sitting cross-legged like they'd been caught in the middle of a palaver. Akechi was red-faced, sniffling, delicately holding up the hem of Akira's trench coat. It appeared that he had been using it to wipe away his tears. The two of them froze, wide-eyed. For a long while, the only sound was the settling of the walls. "Well, interesting. If you haven't seen the last chapter, I'll fill you in. Akechi managed to pry all of the chains off of Akira while he was in the Velvet Room, but that resulted in his hands getting burned. And, after Akira thanked him and said that he was glad he came to save him, this time around, Akechi broke down into tears and hugged him. Like the last time that he was in a room with Ren, he tried to kill him. He killed his cognitive replica, but he could have easily killed him. So that's Akechi, like, the regret that was building up in Akechi since that moment just bursting forth. I wonder what really could have happened if Akechi had met Joker years earlier. But that's the past and this is the present. "Yep," Akira concluded. "I'm never going to live this down." "Well, of course you're not. You just gave the shippers new fuel." Akechi hiccuped. "That makes two of us. See, what happened was Crow here busted me loose but got kind of emotional over it. And with those dumbass gloves, he can't even wipe his eyes without poking them out, so I figured that until my personas got warmed up, he could at least... Oh god, here they come." The Phantom Thieves descended joyously on him. He was swept up in a gale of concern and well-wishing, and babbled questions to which he gave a slightly concussed smile and no further answer. That was all cut short by a muffled scream from Haru. They turned their heads and saw her looking at Akechi, both hands clapped over her mouth and horror clouding her features. "Crow!" she breathed. "Your hands!" Ryuji peered over. He saw what she meant. He backed away, his complexion slightly green. Akechi's hands were splayed out, palm up. His injuries hadn't yet been healed. "It's all right," he said. "A consequence of freeing Joker. I'll be..." You will not be fine! You're even worse than Fogg. It's Haru speaking. You will not be fine! You're even worse than Fox. Akechi shut up. In the background, Yusuke began to speak and was hastily shushed. And the music playing in the background is a good metaphor for how I absolutely fucked this supposedly emotional moment up. Why do I keep stuttering? I shouldn't be doing this right now. I really Panther, Mona, if Joker's indisposed, then could one of you please assist? Morgana bounded over. On it, Zoro's all warmed up anyway. Could the rest of you give me some time to work? The other thieves led Akira a bit further away, as Morgana wordlessly commanded Akechi to show his hands. His exaggerated features made it clear what he thought of Akechi's wounds. His giant corneas shrank down to a pair of fly-sized pinpricks. I'd like to say I've seen worse, but jeez, even getting blasted by Yaldabaoth wasn't so graphic. Nothing I can't handle, though. His mask flared. Zoro, get out here! Elegant, gold-eyed, and top-heavy, the persona materialized over them and flourished his rapier like a conductor's rod, then gently lowered it to Akechi's hands. A soft pale light enveloped the wounds. The pain began to ebb. So that's how Zoro healed wounds, I see. This might take a little bit, so just hang tight, said Morgana. He looked up at Akechi, then back down at the wounds. Hey, word of advice. You really don't want to make Noir mad. You know what happened to the jerk she was going to marry? No. Neither does anyone else. Yeah, I remember. The piece of shit that Haru was arranged to marry and kicked Morgana into a wall. Who was his name again? Oh, it doesn't matter, he's probably dead. Akechi decided not to pursue that avenue of conversation any further. The other thieves had gathered around Akira, recapping him as best and succinctly as they could. Ryuji using some very colorful gestures for his parts. The room continued to crackle and creak around them. The sound had become constant, almost rhythmic. The hole they'd made to enter the room had already closed over, but they paid that little mind. These walls held little terror for them now. Will I be able to play the piano again? Akechi joked, weakly. I didn't know Akechi even played the piano. You're lucky I'm treating you and not Panther. She'd have gone upside your head for that line. He paused. So you freed him? Yes. He was bound to that chair. I had to pull the chains away, hence all of this. A little extreme, but impressive. Well done. Healthy flesh began to fret across Akechi's hands. We were tracking an unknown persona signal to this location. A really strong one. Was that you as well? I don't know. I heard a voice in my head. The same one as in Shido's palace, I think. But I didn't gain any new masks or anything. You sure it wasn't just a mask you already had? Joker said that he talks to Arsene, I know. Not surprising that he'd become friends even with his personas. But I doubt it was Loki speaking to me. We just had an argument. Morgana's eyebrow went up like a sunrise. Well, it was mostly just a lot of shouting on my end. I'd rather not get into it. If you say so. What about Shimizu? Any sign? He spoke to me. I don't know where from. He stayed out of sight. He said he'd come back here after he killed all of you. Well, here we are. And he's still nowhere to be found, so we shouldn't dawdle. He stepped back. I think you're all set. Akechi flexed his fingers. The palms of his gloves were still scorched away, and his muscles were full of pins and needles. But otherwise, that craggy mess of burned flesh and frostbite had been undone by Zoro's healing radiance. Thank you. It's what I do. You should ditch the gloves as well. They're nothing but a hindrance now, especially with those claws. He held up a paw, and his own claws popped out. Go retractable or go home, as I say. Go retractable or go home, I say. I'll keep that in mind, Akechi said dryly, but he acquiesced, peeling off the gloves and casting them aside, talons and all. He stood up, barehanded, and limped over to the other thieves. Akira looked up for him from the floor, and his companion's chattering ceased. All good? Asked Akira. Ready to go. Mona's abilities haven't lost their edge. Flattery gets you nowhere, Morgana said, completely failing to hide his smug grin. Ryuji stepped up, something cradled in his hands. Yo, did you drop this? It seems some serious shit. It was Akechi's helmet. The visor had been shattered completely when he dashed it to the ground. The crack running along the top of it had grown so wide it was a bit of mystery how it held itself together. Akechi still took it without a word, and fit it back over his head after giving it a quick shake to dislodge any leftover shards. The overall effect was strange. Only the bottom half of his beak remained, his collar jutting out like an overgrown fang. You really ought to just ditch that thing, Crow. It's hanging on by a thread. It's fine. This is my mask, after all. He coughed. Sorry for making such a scene just now. What, you mean how you got all weepy? Ryuji just shrugged. It's cool, man. Kinda nice to see you act like a real person for a change. He didn't know how to respond to that. Instead, he turned to Akira. How much did they tell you? Enough. Shimizu, palace, keywords. Collapse the palace and that should be that. Standard heist, just with higher stakes. He got to his feet, dusted off his coat. Oracle, any hint of the treasure? Nothing. This place hasn't gotten any smaller, and he's really good at smothering the signals coming from many points of interest. All I'm picking up now are shadows. They've got this room totally surrounded. She craned her head around. But I still can't see any of them. And their distribution patterns are really weird too, now that I'm getting a closer look. I thought it was because this place was on high alert, but instead of a bunch of blips, I'm getting one solid... The room suddenly lurched hard enough to make all of them stagger. The walls cracked like ice as wood screeched against wood. They were heading up and fast, enough for their knees to buckle and air pressure to settle like lead caps atop their heads. Futaba's map burst into fuzz, fighting to adapt to the labyrinth's newest shape. When the pressure finally ceased, they became very aware of the only sound that remained. The slow, rhythmic creak. The walls bowed in and out with every beat. It was like the room itself was breathing. Wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. That familiar mantra. That relentless tempo. That's Shimizu's voice, said Akechi. That's how he sounded. Guys? Futaba's voice quavered. Her console jittered as her hands fought to remain steady atop it. Remember how I said this place was full of shadows, and Fox said that they were probably the ones rearranging everything? She asked. The Thieves nodded, hesitantly. Well, I think we might have gotten one tiny detail wrong. It's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. It's not full of shadows. She looked at the fissured walls. It's full of one really, really big shadow. Oh. They numbly followed her gaze. Through the cracks in the wood was nothing but black. If they focused, they could see countless golden eyes crawling through that darkness, like termites through tar. This... Seki's palace isn't a palace. Seki's palace is Seki's shadow. How does that work? It was On who gave it a name. Shimizu? Her answer came from every direction at once, in mad howling and jagged cackling and snarled and caustic invective. 1,000 mouths yammering 1,000 replies, and slithering beneath that din, Shimizu's own toneless, colorless words. It's wrong. This isn't how it was supposed to be. It's wrong. It's wrong. But this too has value. Cast assembled. Stage set. With a snapping of nails and planks, the roof peeled away like a scab to reveal the blinding void beyond. Hanging overhead was the black star, a blown pupil in the sclera of the void, bigger than ever. It had gone from the size of a coin to a bloated swamp gas moon, so big they could almost feel it sucking them in. But the remaining void still let in enough light for them to see the shadow plane. A sea of dark coursing in the space between walls like blood through arteries, formless except for the flashes of golden eyes and gnashing teeth. Ryuji pointed up. Guys, it's bigger. Why is it bigger? And the whole palace is this kid's shadow? It's not just that. Morgana huddled close to the other thieves, his eyes swiveling madly in their sockets, trying to take in the whole of Shimizu at once. His shadow is supposed to be the representative of his psyche. If it's become like this, that means his distortion has grown to the point where it's consumed his entire identity. What happened to him? It's tomorrow. They fell silent. Shimizu's shadow throbbed and writhed, the insectile buzz of his voice scraping their ears. Look above. Do you see it? It's tomorrow. Tomorrow and all the tomorrows to come. The dying land, and the rising sea, and the money that isn't there, and the family that doesn't come home, and the center that does not hold, and the society condemned to unravel. This is the revelation. Come and see. See things as they are. And here we are, again. The woodwork cracked again. The planks at the upper lip of this chamber popped free and extended to the black star like grasping fingers. Like hands raised in worship. Next time, guys.